Exactly 26 years ago, a new brand by the name of Richard Mille has been founded. But back then, it wasn't exactly known how it is today, with some watches ranging in the millions of dollars and having collaborations with celebrities and athletes, especially these two athletes, Raphael Nadal and Felipe Massa. But in order to figure out the entire story, stick around to the end to find out. Richard Mille didn't come from the traditional Swiss watch industry. In fact, he's a Frenchman with a passion for motorsport and engineering. After a career working at other brands in the luxury industry, Mille decided to start his own watch company in 1999, essentially as a 50th birthday present to himself. Backed by the famed Swiss manufacturer Audemars Piguet and their renowned et Pape technical team, he set a clear mission: push high-end watchmaking to the very limits of technical innovation. There would be no compromise on materials, design, or cost. As the brand's team later put it, in Formula 1, it costs what it costs to win. That's the same approach we have. Richard has always said that a true luxury brand does not cut corners or make any compromises. In an industry where most companies design watches to hit certain price points, Mille flipped the script. He would design the most extreme watch he could, then figure out the price. He believed that if you create something groundbreaking enough, there will always be collectors willing to pay for it. It was a bold gamble and it paid off quickly. After 2 years of development, Richard Mille unveiled his very first creation, the RM001 Tourbillon, in 2001. This watch was advertised as a racing machine on the wrist, and it looked like nothing else on the market. Crafted with cutting-edge materials and a skeletal, futuristic design, the RM001 featured a movement mounted on a suspension bridge of carbon nanofiber, unheard of at the time. It also carried a jaw-dropping price tag of about £159,000, roughly $135,000 at the time, which was twice the price of the next most expensive tourbillon watch in the world in 2001. Only a very small number were made. Sources differ, but roughly 17 to 80 pieces in total, and yet they sold out almost immediately. The watch press hailed the RM001's debut as the dawn of a new era in watchmaking, and they weren't exaggerating. Richard Mille had exploded onto the scene, smashing the industry's conventions in the process. But why were collectors and enthusiasts so impressed? For one, the RM001 proved that a modern watch could blend formula technology with watch mechanics. It wasn't adorned with diamonds or traditional glided dials. It was all about engineering prowess and performance. As one commentator put it, buying a Richard Mille was like buying a miniature sports car for the wrist. Even Richard Mille himself said that he wanted people to see his watches to simply go. Wow, he achieved that effect by making his timepieces instantly recognizable. Large cases, exposed screws, skeletonized dials that reveal the mechanical heart, and high-tech materials, straight out of aerospace and motorsports. In an era dominated by century-old Swiss houses, Richard Mille's unapologetically bold design and no expense spared approach stood out a mile away. The strategy of extreme innovation, regardless of cost, tapped into a new generation of buyers. Almost overnight, Richard Mille watches became the ultimate status symbols for those in the know. By the 2010s, industry observers nicknamed Richard Mille timepieces as the secret billionaire's handshake, a subtle signal among the ultra-rich. And indeed, when asked in 2014 whether he had sold all of his $2.2 million sapphire crystal tourbillon models, Richard Mille casually replied that they're all sold, all of them. Demand far outstripped supply, even as the brand gradually ramped up production. To this day, Richard Mille deliberately makes fewer than 5,000 watches per year. A tiny number compared to giants like Rolex, and yet those watches routinely sell out, often only available to vetted clients or via secondary markets at a hefty premium. In other words, Richard Mille created something beyond a watch. He created hype, exclusivity, and an entirely new category of luxury sports watches retailing in the 6 and 7 figures. But raw innovation and eye-popping prices alone weren't enough to cement Richard Mille as a legend. To really drive home his brand's philosophy of racing machine for the wrist, Mille needed to prove that these exotic creations could perform under pressure, not just sit in a display case. This is where our first athlete hero enters the story. In the early 2000s, a young Brazilian driver named Felipe Massa was making a name for himself in Formula 1. Little did he know, he was about to become an integral part of the Richard Mille saga. In 2002, the same year he debuted in F1, Felipe Massa met Richard Mille and an enduring partnership was born. In fact, Massa became Richard Mille's very first sporting ambassador, and according to the brand, he never started a Grand Prix race without a Richard Mille watch strapped to his wrist. This was highly unusual. Race car drivers are subject to intense G-forces, vibrations, and crashes. Traditionally, they would never wear an expensive mechanical watch in the cockpit for fear it would break or injure them. But Mille was determined to prove the durability of his designs. What better way than to send his watches into battle on the wrist of an F1 driver? Felipe Massa effectively became Richard Mille's live test driver, not just for cars, but for watches. Richard Mille and his engineering team began developing special references in Massa's name. Built to withstand the rigors of professional racing, in 2004, they introduced the RM006 Felipe Massa Tourbillon, the first watch to feature a baseplate model of carbon nanofiber, a material chosen for its shock resistance and lightweight. The following year, they pushed the envelope further with the RM009 Felipe Massa, which used an aluminum lithium alloy for its case and brought the weight down to a record 28 to 29 grams. To put that in perspective, 28 grams is about the weight of 5 US quarters. Incredibly light for a complex mechanical watch. By stripping out all unnecessary mass and using space-age materials, Mille was treating watch design like race car design. Every gram mattered. Crucially, Felipe Massa didn't just lend his name to these watches. He literally wore them while driving at 200 miles an hour plus. And the tests were as real as it gets. In 2004, during the Hungarian Grand Prix, Massa suffered a racing crash. It was a high-impact collision, but amazingly, both the driver and the watch walked away without any scratches. Massa had been wearing his RM006 Tourbillon during the crash, and thanks to its sturdy carbon nanofiber chassis, the delicate tourbillon movements survived the violent shocks intact. This was a landmark proof of concept for Richard Mille. The incident demonstrated to the world that his pieces weren't fragile showroom queens. They were amazing machines capable of handling extreme conditions. But an even more dramatic test was yet to come. Fast forward to the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix. During qualifying, a freak accident occurred. A suspension spring from another car broke loose on the track and struck Felipe Massa in the head at high speed, knocking him unconscious. His car hurtled straight off and slammed into a tire barrier. It was a life-threatening incident, and Massa suffered a skull fracture and was very lucky to survive. And on his wrist, yes, he was still wearing a Richard Mille, likely an RM006 or similar model given to him by the brand. Incredibly, even after the heavy crash and 67G deceleration forces, Massa's watch emerged without so much as a scratch, completely intact and functional. The man had to be airlifted to a hospital, but the watch could have been put right back in its display box working fine. This almost unbelievable outcome made headlines in both the racing and watch communities. It was the ultimate validation of Richard Mille's claims of toughness. As one chronicle of the event put it, Massa's car was destroyed and he was injured, but the watch emerged unscathed. After that, the legend of Richard Mille's indestructible watches was truly born. If a $500,000 tourbillon could survive a Formula 1 crash, what could it not survive? The company used these episodes in their storytelling, and Felipe Massa, once just a young driver, had become an iconic figure for the brand, a living crash test dummy, proving the merit of Mille's engineering. In interviews, Massa had said that Richard showed him how similar the spirit of watchmaking is to racing. Both involve constant technical challenges, physical stresses, and the need for total concentration. He became extremely close to the Mille family, and to this day is considered part of the Richard Mille family of friends. But around the year 2010, Richard Mille set his sights on an unlikely new partner, a tennis player, and not just any player, Raphael Nadal. The Spanish superstar, already famous for his ferocious playing style and relentlessness on the court. At first glance, tennis might seem gentler on a watch than Formula 1, but consider this: the shock from a ball hitting a racket can be massive, measured in hundreds or even thousands of G's at the wrist, and tennis players are constantly in motion, sweating, stretching. They typically never wear watches or jewelry during play because it could hinder them or get damaged. So when Richard Mille approached Nadal about wearing a tourbillon watch during competitive matches, even Nadal was skeptical. As the story goes, when they first met in 2008, Nadal thought, "You want me to play tennis wearing that on my wrist?" But Richard Mille convinced him that together they could push the limits of watchmaking farther than ever. The goal was to create a watch so light and comfortable that a world-class tennis player could wear it without even noticing, yet so durable that it could handle the shot of his hits for hour after hour. It sounded almost impossible. Tourbillon movements are delicate mechanisms, and professional tennis is basically a torture test. But if they could pull it off, it would be the ultimate showcase of Richard Mille's philosophy. Mille's team got to work, and the project that emerged was the RM027 Raphael Nadal Tourbillon, launched in 2010. To achieve the insane lightness required, they had to entirely rethink their design and materials. The RM027's baseplate was crafted from an ultralight alloy called litol, a lithium aluminum alloy used in aerospace. combined with titanium materials more at home in satellites and Formula 1 cars than in watches. The case was made of a high carbon composite for strength and shock absorption. The result was astounding. The entire watch, including the strap, weighed under 20 grams. Imagine a watch that weighs less than 4 sheets of printer paper. On the wrist, it was practically weightless. In fact, at the time of its release, the RM027 was the lightest mechanical watch in the world. Both Mille and Nadal had achieved what they were aiming for. Yet, hitting the weight target was only half the battle. The watch also needed to survive extreme shocks. During initial testing, Nadal actually shattered 5 prototype watches. He kept breaking them as he practiced, showing just how much stress a power hitter's game could inflict. And so, in 2010, after many tests, Raphael Nadal stepped onto the tennis court wearing a tourbillon on his wrist, something almost unheard of. He played the US Open that year with the RM027 on, and not only did the watch hold up, Nadal went on to win the tournament. The sight of Nadal lifting the trophy while wearing a futuristic blacked out Richard Mille became an instant marketing triumph. Here was a Grand Slam champion endorsing this radical watch not just with words, but by actually using it in the most intense athletic environment. It was authenticity at its finest, proof in action. Suddenly, sports fans around the world were asking, what is that thing on Raphael's wrist? When they learned it was a $525,000 Richard Mille, their jaws dropped. The story even had a dramatic postscript. After Nadal's victory at the French Open in 2012, one of his Richard Mille watches was stolen from his hotel room in Paris, making international news. French police eventually recovered the watch, worth about $376,000, and they arrested a hotel barman who had taken it as an irresistible prize. The thief had snuck into Nadal's room at night to steal that tiny treasure off the bedside table, and this incident only added to the Richard Mille mystique. When even thieves are willing to risk everything for your watch, you know it's serious. However, Raphael Nadal's partnership with Richard Mille didn't end with the RM027. In fact, it kicked off an entire line of Nadal signature models, each more impressive than the last. In 2013, they unveiled the RM2701 Raphael Nadal, an evolution of the original concept. And then in 2017, they released the RM2703 Raphael Nadal, which took shock resistance to an almost absurd level, 10,000 G. Yes, this tourbillon watch can survive accelerations that would obliterate almost any other mechanical object. And with both Felipe Massa and Raphael Nadal, there have been many more celebrities and athletes who endorsed Richard Mille and made it what it is today. But I think these are the main two, definitely. As well as it's so surprising that only 26 years ago, Richard Mille was founded, and now it's a company worth hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars. So if you, yes you, personally enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and YouTube really thinks you're gonna like the video that's gonna pop up, so trust me, click on it, you won't regret it. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye.